Welcome friends to this course on understanding episodist drama. We are in week 8 and this is going to be lecture number 1. Today we'll talk about Badal Sarkar, an Indian absurdist playwright. Badal Sarkar was a pioneering Indian playwright, theatre director, actor and celebrated for his innovative contributions to modern Indian theatre. Born on 15 July 1925 in Calcutta, he was originally named Sudhindra Sarkar. His works primarily explored social and political themes, challenging conventions and encouraging audience engagement. Bal Sarkar was a central figure in modern Indian theatre. His plays are known for their use of innovative techniques and their critique of societal norms. He founded Shatabdi, a theatre group in the year 1967, which would later develop into a third theatre group about which we'll discuss in detail in slides to come. Some of the most important plays by Badal Sarkar include Evam Indrajit, Pagla Ghoda, Bhoma, Mitchell, Rokto Korobi and Ekhon Noy. His approach to theatre inspired generations of theatre practitioners in India and beyond. His minimalist style and emphasis on storytelling over spectacle have been widely celebrated. He was awarded Padma Shri in 1972 and Sangeet Natak Academy Fellowship in the year 1997. Sarkar passed away on 13th May 2011 in Kolkata. Despite his demise, his revolutionary ideas and impactful works continue to resonate in contemporary Indian theatre. Badal Sarkar's philosophy of theatre was deeply rooted into this belief that theatre should be a tool for social change and cultural transformation. Most of his plays deal with socio-political issues through which Badal Sarkar wants to reform Indian society. Badal Sarkar discusses class issues, gender issues, issues of women empowerment and other socio-political issues which contemporary India was facing then. Badal Sarkar believed that theatre should address contemporary socio-political, economic issues. He used his plays to critique class inequalities, urban alienation and marginalization of poor people in Indian society. For Badal Sarkar, theatre was a medium of communication. Talking about his philosophy of theatre as a tool of communication, Badal Sarkar writes, and I quote, "Communication is essential in every art form. The artist communicates to other people through literature, music, painting, acting. But the methods of communication are different. A writer writes. He does not have to be present when his writing is being read. So it is with the painter and the sculptor. In cinema, the film artists do not have to be present when the film is being projected. But in the theatre, the performers have to be present when the communication takes place. This is a fundamental difference. Theatre is a live show. Cinema is not. In theatre, communication is direct. In cinema, it is through images." Thus, for Badal Sarkar, theatre is a live performance where the actor or the performer is performing live on the stage and his purpose is to communicate his ideas to the audience directly. There is no intermediary involved and therefore the possibility of social change which can be brought about by direct communication also becomes stronger. Through his plays, Badal Sarkar rejected both proscenium theatre and Indian folk theatre. In fact, he proposed an alternative called the third theatre. The third theatre, conceptualized and pioneered by Badal Sarkar, was a revolutionary movement in Indian theatre that aimed to break away from the traditional forms of proscenium theatre and folk theatre. It was born out of a desire to make theatre more accessible, relevant and contemporary. The most important feature of the third theatre was the rejection of the proscenium theatre. Proscenium theatre refers to a theatre that features a proscenium arch, a large frame or arch that separates the stage from the audience. This setup creates a picture frame effect, allowing the audience to view the performance as if looking through a window. Most of the theatres that you find in India or auditoriums are examples of proscenium theatre. Proscenium theatre is marked by fixed stage, audience seating arrangements, and a fourth wall about which we have already discussed in our previous classes. There is elaborate use of sets, lighting, costumes, sound effects. Proscenium theatre is also text based and script centric. In the proscenium theatre, audience are usually exclusive and they use tickets to enter into theatre. Badal Sarkar rejected this Western proscenium theatre. Talking about what happens in his third theatre, Badal Sarkar says, there is no separate stage. The performance is on the floor. That is, the performers and the spectators are within the same environment. This is intimate theatre. The performers can see the spectator clearly, can approach him individually, can whisper in his ears, can even touch him if he wants. So Badal Sarkar clearly indicates that his third theatre is not proscenium theatre. Badal Sarkar rightly suggests that his third theatre emphasizes simplicity in staging and performance. It uses minimal props, sets and costumes, focusing instead on the actor's body, voice and expressions as primary tools of communication. Performances in third theatre often took place in open, non-conventional spaces such as parks, courtyards and streets. This removed the barrier of theatre halls and brought performances closer to the people. Sarkar aimed to erase the boundary between actors and the audience, fostering a sense of direct engagement. The audience was often encouraged to participate actively, making theatre a shared collective experience. His third theatre was also non-commercial theatre. Sarkar rejected the commercialization of theatre, which he believed stifled creativity. Performances were usually free with voluntary contributions accepted, making theatre accessible to people from all economic backgrounds. So, the philosophy behind Badal Sarkar's third theatre was one, democratization of theatre so that the theatre becomes accessible to everyone, irrespective of your class that you belong to. You can be a participant in the theatre practice, whether as a spectator or as an actor. 2. Theatre becomes a tool for social change. Most of the plays that Badal Sarkar wrote, they talk about socio-political problems of contemporary India. In his estimation, theatre which is without purpose, which is without goal, is of no consequence, and therefore Badal Sarkar would use his plays to awaken people's consciousness. In that sense, one can find the influence of G.B. Shaw and Ibsen on the plays of Badal Sarkar. Badal Sarkar also suggests that his third theatre is a street theatre, although every street theatre is not an example of third theatre. Pointing out the various aspects of third theatre, a very important drama critic Sudhanva Deshpande writes, and I quote, Badal Sarkar, more than anyone else, pioneered the play without the text. It was the technique of using the actor as text. The body of the actor becomes the text. The result is a Spartan production, which is an ideological position. The stand, of course, is that I will use nothing else because that is the essential thing. Thus, according to Sudhanva Deshpande, Sarkar emphasized the primacy of the actor over text or technology or spectacle. He trained his actors to use their bodies, voices and emotions as primary tools for storytelling, reducing the need for elaborate costumes, sets, or lighting. His third theatre was also often called open theatre or free theatre. Free theatre because it was free from the conventions of the proscenium theatre, and also that it was free for its audience. It was also called open theatre because it was often performed in open spaces like in parks or in streets. Now let us examine briefly the sources of third theatre which influenced Badal Sarkar in his conception of this unique form of theatre practice. Badal Sarkar's third theatre was influenced by local Indian rural theatre, Jatra in particular. Jatra is a traditional folk theatre form of Bengal and parts of Odisha, Assam and Bangladesh, known for its dramatic storytelling, music and larger-than-life performances. The word Jatra means journey in Sanskrit. Jatra is believed to have originated as a form of devotional theatre dedicated to Krishna Bhakti in 16th century during Bhakti movement. Over time, Jatra evolved to include several themes such as social reform, historical events, and patriotic narratives. Jatra is marked by theatrical style, musicality, and minimal props and sets. Jatra troupes are nomadic, traveling from village to perform. Further, unlike proscenium theatre, Jatra involves direct engagement with the audience, fostering a communal and participatory experience. Badal Sarkar's third theatre drew heavily from these elements of Jatra. His minimalist aesthetic, as far as the use of props was concerned, his use of space, any space for that matter in theatre, of course was influenced by Jatra. There is also some indications that Badal Sarkar's third theatre was influenced by Bertolt Brecht's epic theatre. You would remember our discussion on epic theatre in the first week. Epic theatre was a theatrical movement that emerged in the early 20th century and was primarily associated with Bertolt Brecht, a German playwright. Brecht was a Marxist, therefore through his plays he wanted to reform society. For Brecht also, theatre was a tool for social change. Brecht did not want immersion of the audience into the performance. He wanted a critical distance that the audience must maintain while viewing the performance, so that the audience is able to critically reflect upon what is happening on the stage. His epic theatre was marked by non-linear plots and storytelling. Brecht focused on issues like class struggle, injustice, and societal norms. Direct address to the audience was another important feature of Brechtian theatre. Minimalism in design, simple sets, props, and costumes were also used amply by Bertolt Brecht. In light of these observations, it becomes clear that Badal Sarkar's third theatre was a Brechtian theatre appropriated in Indian context. Some scholars also suggest that his third theatre was also influenced by the theatre of the oppressed and poor theatre. The theatre of the oppressed is a form of participatory theatre developed by Brazilian theatre practitioner Augusto Boal in the 1960s. Rooted in Marxist philosophy and Paulo Freire's pedagogical ideas, it aimed to empower marginalized communities by transforming spectators into active participants or actors in theatrical process. So the spectator does not remain a passive spectator, he remains a spectator, but he also becomes an actor. Theatre of the oppressed was for social and political change. It challenged the binary between oppressor and the oppressed, focusing on the issues of class injustice. Poor theatre was a concept developed by Polish theatre director and theorist Jerzy Grotowski. In Grotowski's theatre as well, the interaction between actor and audience was essential. Grotowski believed that the theatre should focus on the relationship between the actor and the audience. He viewed theatre as a spiritual act or ritual where actors and audience could engage in transformative experience. Because Badal Sarkar's theatre focused on the body of the actor as a text, it also promoted physical theatre where the performances of the actor were more important than the text. In fact, the body of the actor itself becomes a site of performance in the third theatre. Evam Indrajit was written and performed in the year 1962. The play revolves around a man called Indrajit, who is perhaps an illusion of the mind of the writer. When the play starts, the writer is suffering from the writer's block. He is frustrated and depressed. He is unable to write anything. His aunt comes and requests him to eat something which he refuses. Later, a young girl suddenly appears from somewhere. She is called Manasi, referring to the creation of the writer's mind. Manasi says, "Finished?" Writer says, "No." Mansi says, "Won't you read out what have you written so far?" Writer says, "It is no good. I have nothing to write about." Mansi says, "Nothing?" Writer says, "What shall I write? Who shall I write about? How many people do I know and what do I know about them?" Mansi says, "There are these people. Don't you know any of them? Don't you know anything about any of them?" Writer says, "Them? Oh yes, I do know a couple of them, a few like us, but they won't make a play." Mansi says, "Try." Writer says, "I have tried." The opening scene of the play clearly reminds us of Pirandello's play, Six Characters in Search of an Author. Mansi is a character from the play the writer is writing. The play is the story of Mansi and Indrajit, but the character has walked into the life of the writer and is requesting him to write her story and of course the story of Indrajit. Sometime later, there are four more characters who walk into the writer's room. These four characters are Amal, Vimal, Kamal and Nirmal. However, we come to know later that the last man has lied to the writer. His real name is not Nirmal. He is named Indrajit. Writer says, "Amal, Vimal, Kamal and Nirmal." No, it cannot be. You must have another name. You have to have. Tell me truly, what is your name? What is your name? Fourth character who has appeared in the room of the writer from somewhere says, "Indrajit Ray." Writer then asks, "Why did you call yourself Nirmal?" Fourth says, "I was scared." Writer asks him, "Scared of what?" Fourth character says, "Scared of unrest." One invites unrest by breaking the norms. Writer asks him, "Have you always called yourself Nirmal?" Fourth says, "No, but I do now." Writer asks him, "Why?" Fourth says, "I am older now. Age is afraid of joy, of happiness. It only wants comfort, peace. Now Indrajit wants the comfort of a dark, cloudy sky." The other name of Nirmal as Indrajit, which Indrajit has been hiding, reflects the double lives human beings live. We are something else and we project ourselves to be something else. There is a gap between what we are and what we want to be. And therefore, as human beings, we constantly conceal our true identities. The fourth character has walked into the imagination of the writer because he wants his life to be written. He has grown older, he wants comfort, he wants peace, and he is closer towards his death. However, writer has been unable to write anything meaningful. Mansi again appears after a while and asks, "Have you written anything?" Writer says, "No." Although the writer says, "I have written many plays. I want to write many more, but I know nothing about the suffering masses, nothing about the toiling peasants, nothing about the sweating coal miners, nothing about the snake charmers, the tribal chieftains or the boatmen. There is no beauty in the people around me, no splendor, no substance, only the undramatic material." Writer is dissatisfied with the boredom of middle class life. Writer perhaps belongs to the middle class and he is aware of the banality of middle class human beings. They do not provide him with any dramatic conflict, and of course, without conflict, there is no drama possible. Writer has a desire to know about the poor, about the suffering, about the marginalized communities. He wants to write about farmers who are suffering. He wants to write about laborers who are sweating in coal mines. He wants to write about snake charmers, about tribal chieftains. But he cannot because he has not accumulated the experience. He has no idea of what is happening in their lives. And without truth that he has observed or that he has lived, how can he write? Therefore, the writer suffers from this anxiety of not knowing the truths of life. Of course, when Badal Sarkar refers to suffering masses of toiling coal miners and tribal chieftains, it reminds us of his Brechtian Marxist politics. The second act of the play takes place after a 7-year gap. The characters Amal, Vimal and Kamal have settled into a routine middle class life. They have steady jobs and families. Their daily tasks involve repetitive office work, filing papers, stamping documents, organizing files, with no escape from monotony. It has been properly documented in the play by Badal Sarkar and the writer. After the files, tea, then files, then snacks, then files, then tea, then files, then tram, bus, train. There are bigger offices where more important business is transacted. Their files, then tea, tea then, files then, lunch then, files then, coffee then, files, and then office transport, taxi car. In other words, this middle class life is marked by coffee, tea and files. There is nothing more. There is nothing beyond coffee, tea and files. Badal Sarkar is trying to foreground the banality of middle class bourgeois life where nothing dramatic, nothing interesting happens. This predictable, meaningless lifestyle stifles Indrajit, who yearns for something beyond the confines of societal norms. He is searching for meaning outside the mundane reality. In the third act, Indrajit's perspective is revealed through a letter that he sends to the writer. In the letter, Indrajit describes his life as being stuck in endless cycle, and the worst part is his awareness of this repetitive pattern. At one point, he grasps at hope to find some meaning, but it slips away, leaving him disillusioned. He is then presented on stage with an idealized view of life, which he finds impossible to reconcile with his own experiences. Indrajit feels confused and weary, unable to make sense of his accomplishments and contemplating death. When Mansi asks the writer about his story at the end of the play, he replies that he is at a point where neither the writer nor Indrajit can continue. He cannot kill him off, nor can he fit him into a plot that has significance. The writer is stuck just as he was at the beginning without a story. Writer says, "I am tired. I am very tired. Let all these rapid questions be. In the mute enveloping darkness, let me just go to sleep. What is the use of all these words? Why fling arguments in the wild winds? I am sick of reasoning now, alone in the depth of shadows. Let me just go to sleep." The writer is tired and exhausted. He is exhausted because he cannot create something meaningful. He says he is sick of reasoning now. He does not want to write because finally all the words are meaningless. He wants to lie in comfort. Perhaps he is contemplating death because he has encountered the absurdity of life, meaninglessness of life. In the final scenes of the play, Indrajit and Mansi sit together near a tree in an empty plot of land. Indrajit, now more mature, is still troubled by essential question of why. Why do we do what we do in the way we do? He reflects the futility of following a path with no clear beginning, middle, or end. At this moment, the myth of Sisyphus is invoked. Writer says, "You and I cannot be Nirmals. For us, there is only the road, so walk on. We are the cursed spirits of Sisyphus. We have to push the rock to the top, even if it rolls down." Here, you will be reminded of the story of Sisyphus, who was punished by gods for his rebellion. He was punished to take a rock to the top of the mountain, which he will take. But the moment the rock will reach to the top of the mountain, it will fall back to the ground. And Sisyphus was supposed to continue this task repeatedly without any end. Sarkar suggests that this is what life is, a repetition of meaningless acts day after day, every day. The play is a meta-theatrical play because this play is extremely self-conscious of its own theatricality. As one of the characters in the play, Mansi says, there is not much difference between the beginning and the end. It is a circular play. Characters walk into theatrical universe, which is again an indication of meta-theatricality of Badal Sarkar's play Evam Indrajit. The play, like several absurdist dramatists, suggests that time is indivisible. There can be no division of time into tomorrow, today, and yesterday, as Indrajit famously suggests in the play. The past and the present are two ends of a single rope. They are apart because dream is alive. Otherwise, the future could easily be broken down and thrown into the arms of the past. To conclude, Badal Sarkar is considered one of the key figures in the development of modern Indian theatre, particularly for his contribution to the absurdist movement. While his plays do not strictly adhere to the Western tradition of absurdism, they do share core elements of the absurdist theatre, such as the portrayal of life's inherent meaninglessness, the alienation of individuals, and the futility of human existence. In his plays, Sarkar explores themes of existential crisis and alienation. His protagonists, like Indrajit, are often portrayed as disillusioned individuals who feel trapped in an unchanging, meaningless world. Repetition and futility is another important feature of Badal Sarkar's plays. Much like Samuel Beckett's Waiting for Godot, his plays emphasize the repetitive nature of human existence. Characters engage in monotonous, purposeless tasks, mirroring the absurdity of their lives. Like in Evam Indrajit, characters perform the same office work every day, filing papers, stamping documents, tea, coffee, filing, tea, coffee, filing. Like absurdist playwrights, Badal Sarkar also uses minimalism in his theatre. His stripped down approach draws attention to the inner lives of the characters rather than physical environment. To conclude, Badal Sarkar intermingles Western absurdist theatrical traditions with Indian theatrical traditions and stages absurdity in Indian context. His plays hold a mirror to the absurdities of human life and its meaninglessness. However, unlike absurdist playwrights, his plays have a deep social commitment for political and cultural change. That's all for today. We'll meet in our next class. Thank you.